Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to start a new book reading called The Time Machine. The reason why I'm reading this book is because when I was a kid I saw a movie called The Time Machine, and it's till this day it's still one of my most favorite adventure movies of all time. And today I'm going to read a book about it. What I will also do before I start here is I will put a link in the description of the trailer of the Time Machine of the movie, so you can also see what it was all about. So I'm going to start with the introduction as always, and thank you so much for listening, and here we go. Introduction. When I had started building the time machine, I've had this stupid idea that the people of the future would certainly be far ahead of us in all their inventions. The most important person in this book, and we know him only as the time traveler, has built his own time machine and has gone forward into the future to the year 802,701. He expects to find a world with more intelligent people, better machines, and a much better way of living. Perhaps we expect this too, because most books and films about time travel show the future in this way. Instead, he discovers a world where people live simple lives. They play and dance in the sunshine. They live in groups in large ruined buildings from an earlier time. They eat nothing except fruit and own nothing except the clothes they wear. At first, this is only an inconvenience for the time traveler because he had come badly prepared for a world like this. He had brought only a box of matches. He has no camera, no medicine, not even anything to smoke. To us, a world without meat or tobacco may seem better, or at least healthier, than the modern world. But H.G.WELLS wrote this book at the end of the 19th century. At that time, people ate meat if they could afford it, and most men smoked, and very few people really questioned these habits. During the 1800s, the lives of people in Britain had changed more than they ever had before. 100 years earlier, most had worked on the land and had lived very similar lives to the lives of their parents. By 1895, when the time machine appeared, millions had moved to the growing cities and were working in factories. The richer people were able to enjoy the things that the new machines produced, but life for the ordinary workers and their families was difficult, dirty, and often dangerous. The future of the great number of workers in the city, and of society in general, was on many people's mind. It was not really surprising that Karl Marx had lived in London. He had seen the situation of the workers there and put the results of his thinking into his books. Wells was not a follower of Marx, but he believed that everybody should have the chance to go to school, that science could improve people's lives, and that a better, fairer kind of society was possible. At the beginning of the book, Wells shows us that the time traveler lives in a large house and has servants. His friends include a doctor, a psychologist, and the editor of a newspaper. People who have good jobs. The time traveler seems to do no regular work himself, so either he has a lot of money or he makes money from his inventions. Wells then sent him forward in time to a possible future. In this time, the workers and the managers have become more and more separate until they have almost lost contact with each other completely. Their different lives have changed them into physically quite different species. The workers are ugly creatures who live almost like animals, although they still remember how to make things, while the managers have changed into people who are small, quite beautiful, and completely useless. It is possible to see this as an old fight between good and bad, but Wells was not a very religious man. Also, to help the beautiful people, the time traveler is ready to fight against the others. On a number of occasions, he attacks those in the other group, and can only, with difficulty, stop himself killing them. This is perhaps not the normal behavior of a good man, but the end of the 19th century was a time when war, often fought in colorful uniforms, was still seen as an activity in which men showed that they were men. Nobody could imagine the great killing of the next 50 years. In the book, Wells says that difficulties and dangers make people strong, clever, and intelligent. And it is clear that strength includes the ability and willingness to fight. Wells argued for world peace, but understood the nature of men. So when he uses weapons, the time traveler only does what was expected of a man of his time. But he can dance too, and when he fights or when he dances, he shows types of behavior that belong to each of two human groups of the future. One of the dinner guests in chapter 1 is a psychologist. Like many people of his time, Wells was interested in this new science, and it's also possible to see the two social groups of the future as different parts of the human mind. Sigmund Freud's first book appeared in the same year as A Time Machine, and Robert Louis Stevenson, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, had come out less than 10 years before. In that book, Stevenson used science to separate the good and bad sides of the same person in a different way. Wells was doing something similar. Wells was, perhaps, also examining his own behavior. He was a very hard worker. In his life, he wrote more than Dickens and Shakespeare together, but he also enjoyed his free time, sometimes in a way that shocked many people. Although Wells married his cousin in 1891, just over a year later, he ran away with and later married one of his students. Later, he had a great number of relationships with other women, which his wife appeared to accept. When the time traveler goes into the future, he meets a woman called Weena, and they become close friends. We are told that Weena, like the others of her group, is small and almost childlike. To us, there may be something slightly roaring about this description, but confident women with ideas of equality were unusual in Wells's time. Some existed. They were known as New Women, and in his book, Anne Veronica, from 1909, Wells wrote about one of them. But in general, middle-class women were seen as weak creatures to be protected by men. And so the time traveler protects Weena, and she cares for him. Nothing more happens in the relationship between them. This book is not a love story. At times in the book, we may feel that all human work of Wells's time, all the scientific progress, has been useless in the end. Wells left his course at London Science College before he finished it, because he had lost interest in his studies. At one point, the time traveler sees some old books that had fallen to pieces. He thinks about the scientific paper he wrote himself, which have now turned to dust. After he leaves the year 802,701, the time traveler travels forward further and further in time until he finally stops his machine on a frozen beach under an enormous red dying sun. The world has stopped turning, and its end is near. In the end, the power of nature is greater than the power of science, and there is no real purpose to human life. This sadness in the book may be a result of the mood of the time. The story was written at the very end of the 1800s, when many people were afraid of the new century. Some felt correctly that a great war between European countries was coming and that things would never be the same again. But it may be that Wells could see beyond the daily lives of people with their hopes and fears, beyond life and death, to a greater picture in which all of us simply live in this world and one day will leave it. H.G. Wells wrote about the ideas and problems of his time, but he also wrote about feelings which are true in any time, including our own. That is one reason why The Time Machine, like a number of his books, is still popular today. Herbert George Wells was born in England in 1866. He did not come from a rich family. His parents had a small shop, but it was not successful and closed when he was 13. He worked at different times in a clothes shop and a chemist's. He always read a lot and later managed to get a place at a science college. After he left there, he became a teacher, but he was badly hurt while playing football, and this meant that he could not continue. He then worked in London, writing for newspapers and doing some teaching of small groups. None of this made him much money. The Time Machine was his first fictional work. It appeared in weekly parts in a magazine in 1894, and as a book the following year. At the time, Wells was married to his second wife and was trying to support both her and her mother. He needed to make money, so he wrote it quite quickly. Although he was never really happy with the finished book, it was a great success and allowed him to continue as a writer. It is not easy for us to understand how different this book was from others of the time. It is the first real science fiction book. It introduced the reader to the idea of time as a fourth dimension. With the 3 dimensions of space 10 years before Einstein made it part of scientific thinking, Wells also described a simple, mechanical answer to the problem of time travel: the time machine. Nobody had ever described time travel in a machine before, and the words time machine entered the English language. After the great success of this book, Wells wrote more science fiction. His most famous books are The Island of Dr. Monroe from 1896, The Invisible Man, 1897, The War of the Worlds, 1898, and The First Man in the Moon from 1901. All of them had been filmed, some more than once. The War of the Worlds and The Invisible Man are also Penguin readers, and H.G. Wells died in London in 1946. And that was my introduction for The Time Machine. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in chapter 1. Take care. Bye-bye.